Hi there, everybody. Oh, the music even stopped. That's great. So I'm Brian O'Kelly, according to my talking points. This is Howard Lerman,
Hello.
CEO of Yext. I'm the CEO of AppNexus. Welcome to the latest in our Leaders at AppNexus speaker events, a series of talks that brings together the top thinkers and innovators in the technology and media industry. I'm supposed to tell you about a couple of upcoming events. This Thursday, May 16th, Maya Tolstoy, PhD, associate professor at some really long observatory name, part of Columbia, will be giving a lecture on deep-sea earthquakes, focusing on new developments in data collection that may help with forecasting for large tsunami-generating quakes. And next Tuesday, May 21st, a fireside chat with Rap Genius co-founder Elon Zachary and Michael Rubenstein, president of AppNexus. So two pretty awesome events. And if you feel like tweeting, can we put this on the record?
We can put everything on the record.
I knew he'd say that. If you want to hashtag, hashtag live at AppNexus is our hashtag for the night. Enough business. So I have been hoping for this event for a very long time, years. Howard is one of my favorite people in the New York technology scene. He's absolutely crazy and proud of it, which I'm very pleased with. And we've been, I think, sort of on the same trajectory, more or less, over the past 5 years, building two of the luminary technology companies in the city. And so every time we get together, usually over a drink or two or 10, we talk about all the similarities and all of the challenges and what we've learned. And it's just a real pleasure to talk to you and have you share some of those experiences with all of us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing that would be helpful for those of us who don't really understand Yext is for you to explain Yext to the audience.
Sure. How many of you have heard of Yext before? Besides looking at the logo here. Wow, a lot of hands came down. Okay.
Okay, besides Yext employees.
How many of you are Yext employees? Okay. How many of you are AppNexus employees? Okay, we will not be fighting you guys later. So we take a view at Yext that location information is fragmented inside a business. That is, if you're Sears, when are you open, and what stores you have, and what those phone numbers are, and what pictures of your store managers are not really accurately captured very well by a business. And location information is fragmented outside of business. So people today look on Yelp and Yahoo and Google and Facebook and Foursquare and dozens of other places to find information about a local business. And so in this way, we say that location is fragmented. It's fragmented inside and outside of business. And Yext makes it possible with our software to first help a brand or a business capture their information, capture information at the local level with our platform, and then update it everywhere. So that if you're a small business, you can use Yext software to take a picture of your business, and then have that picture immediately appear on 50 listing sites like Yelp, Yahoo, Bing, and dozens of others. And so in this way, we help brands and businesses deliver a local discovery experience that helps them get found and get picked out of the pack in local search, all aligned with Yext's mission, which is to get perfect location information into every hand.
So it's a powerful concept, and I have certainly experienced this both firsthand and secondhand, sort of the underlying plumbing aspect of this, which is, all of a sudden information across the internet just seems a little bit better. And it's pretty clear that a lot of that's because you're secretly, magically making things like store open hours appear places.
That's right.
That didn't used to.
That's right. So if you've ever found the wrong information in a map, we want to fix that problem. And the problem is not just for the end user that finds the wrong information. That's kind of the realization or actualization of the problem. But it really starts with the fact that you have dozens of places that people are looking for location data, and there's no dominant way for a brand or a business to control their own data. We believe at Yext, our view is that the authentic source of information about a business is the business itself, of objective information, of what time they're open. If there's a piece of objective content, like the phone number of a business, that's not the kind of thing that users should be able to vote on. Like, is this the correct phone number for this business? It's the other way around. It should be, let's kind of use an analogy here. Facebook is a social, how many of you have heard of Facebook? Just kidding. Are we friends? We're totally friends. We're friends on Foursquare. In fact, I saw you checked in here earlier. That's cool.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm the mayor of the Razzle Dazzle space. I'm not. Someone stole it from me. Never mind.
Who?
I don't know.
Let's
an
get it back.
employee, I think.
Okay. So here's the thing. Like, Facebook has perfect information on a certain set of people in their graph, what they call their graph. Facebook has extremely good information on people. And the reason that they have perfect information on say, Brian, and know that Brian went to Princeton, and that Brian is the founder and CEO of AppNexus, is because Brian told that to Facebook. And Brian is the one that put that in. And similarly, Yext believes that it's the business that should say what information is about them. The problem is that people don't just use one platform to find local information, they use dozens. And so there needs to be a mechanism for users to find the right information, for someone to be able for a business to be able to say, we're open at this time, and this is our phone number, and here's a picture of our business, and this is how much this particular product costs, and here's the event we're having tonight, and then have it sync everywhere that people might find it. So that's the problem we're solving.
Now, naively, that seems, not in an insulting way, totally and completely obvious.
I know. So is Dropbox. You know, it's funny. We actually say, hey, look, the analogy we use to describe what we do is, with Dropbox, you put the file right there, and boom, it's everywhere across all your devices. And similarly, Yext, if you update your listing in Yext, we sync it everywhere. But what's funny is that the simple concepts we believe tend to over the long run be great businesses, but it's the execution that actually matters. And if there's one thing I've learned in building a company in New York City, it's not just about the idea. Everyone ideas are a dime a dozen. People have many great ideas. There's all kinds of great ideas. Every blogger has every possible idea. It's like Taco Bell. Every blogger just is constantly coming up with every possible sort of subtlety at everything. But it's all about the execution. And we've just stayed focused on one core use case and trying to make the best location software that syncs and updates location data everywhere. Just like Dropbox made the best, actually, and there's all kinds of things that tried to do what they did before. Driveway, I don't know if you remember X.com. This was like when I was like in high school. But now they actually made a great product, and it just works, and it just is simple. And so just because an idea is obvious, in fact, maybe some of the best ideas do tend to be obvious. Like Captain Obvious.
So I think that so you wrote a business plan. You thought, here's an idea, an obvious idea. I'm going to start a company around an incredibly obvious idea.
So, is that a question?
I don't know. I mean, how many people? You're basically saying that ideas are worthless, and yet you're saying you have this amazing company built around this incredibly obvious. So I guess I'm saying you didn't. I know you didn't write a business plan around it. So how did you find?
Of course I didn't write a business plan. Business plans are stupid because they're stale the minute the pen hits the paper. If you write it with a quill pen, I think so.
So Christopher Columbus invented America, right?
Right. Him and Al Gore.
Right. Yeah. So I'm saying you are the Christopher Gore of location for businesses, right? But I'm saying
Al Columbus.
You obviously didn't invent this idea, right? This was on blogs forever, right?
Right.
But how did you discover this idea, this obvious idea sitting right in front of all of us?
And I think there's a great parallel here between sort of my journey and your journey, in that we didn't stumble upon this idea. This is an obvious concept, but actually pulling it off is incredibly challenging. Why is Facebook and MySpace? It's a similar concept on paper 10 years ago. Like, you could have read what a business plan for one and the other and really not been able to tell which one's successful. And it turns out that the things that make a technology company successful, I think, are a combination of deep domain expertise and go-to-market, like just an incredibly powerful go-to-market. And then, of course, continuous innovation and iteration to make something good. And so, Yext did not start off trying to solve this problem. This problem, we started off building a pay-per-call business in 2006. I had you buy that original office. Boy, was it a shithole. Can I say that here? Sorry.
You just did.
Oh. I guess I can. Shithole. So we.
We can edit the video.
Okay.
It's okay.
Right. So we started off solving a totally different problem in the ecosystem, and then learned kind of an angle that we thought was going to serve any business. And so we actually, Yext took the unusual move. We built this pay-per-call business. We grew it to 30 million in revenue. It was profitable. And it was only selling to certain verticals, but it was not going to change the world. And we saw a bigger opportunity to sync the world's location data across platforms, number one. And number two, we saw that our sort of first business wasn't, it was still growing, but it wasn't going to be 100 times as big as it is today. And we took the unusual move of actually spinning out, after having, by the way, raised 3.5, then 25 million of a C round into this pay-per-call business. We were like, uh-oh, we want to do something else. And so I just basically started a whole new company within this company, spun out the original one. This one, the new one, grew so quickly that we last year sold the original business we sold the original business to IAC, and all that capital went into Yext to help us build. It was almost like a financing event that we did not need to raise another financing event. And so I think you see these ideas by basically getting so into the details of a certain area, but then kind of jumping back and forth between the tiny details that make something, that make something hum, and the big picture, that you're able to formulate a strategy and something great. My guess is that you went through something similar with AppNexus. As the inventor of Right Media, which everyone knows the story of, and having basically pioneered that entire concept of an advertising exchange, you learned so much in that particular domain, number one. Number two, you forged such deep relationships with the stakeholders that matter, whether it's Yahoo or Microsoft backs AppNexus, but I'm sure you first met the people there and gained credibility in your work at Right Media. I think we've just both kept it something so long in a similar space that we just know it so well that we're able to architect something that's extremely likely to be successful.
I agree with the point, but I spent 4 years at Right Media in the online advertising technology space and then started an online advertising technology company. What's the connection? I don't think everyone understands the pay-per-call business, and I'll do my best to understand it, which was, you did.
I still don't understand AppNexus, so.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's a detail.
Yeah.
But I think, so your pay-per-call business, as I remember it, is effectively lead gen. I remember gyms were one of your big verticals, right? So someone goes online and searches for, I want to join a gym. And then, you would say, here are some gyms near you.
Yep.
Pick up the phone, call the gym, sign up, and you get paid a commission for connecting to the gym.
That's exactly right.
More or less the business?
That's more or less the business. There was some magic there that we would transcribe the phone call, look for relevant keywords that occurred in the call. So if you call an auto repair shop, we'd bill a different amount based on the contents of the call. So if you called and asked for a transmission, we detected the keyword transmission, we charge you a lot more than if we heard oil change, which is a much less valuable thing. But that's the basic idea.
Right. So there's certainly interesting technology there that probably doesn't apply to your current business. There's no transcription. There's no. So that's obviously valuable, and it's why IAC bought the business. But what about that business gave you that domain expertise that let you go say, hey, these companies have a location problem?
Well, we were sending around track numbers for businesses to all these sites, messing up their listings on all these sites with the wrong phone number. And I was like, crap, we're actually contributing to a huge problem here. Let's solve this problem we're creating. But I think we dealt firsthand with sending feeds of tracked phone numbers to Yahoo, to Yelp, to Bing, to dozens of local experience sites, and we saw what a mess basically the basic online presence. And by the way, not just for a small business, but Yext today represents 50 Fortune 500 companies. Some huge companies, some brands that we all use every day. Because if you think the problem is bad for one location, imagine what it's like for 5,000.
Yeah, I think that's what's really fascinating about this, is that your pivot wasn't random. It wasn't like you just said, I don't like this business, I'm doing a new one. It's that the first problem you solved let you see firsthand another problem, and that's when you pivoted. And of course, it's incredibly brave to do that, and very few people succeed that late into a company and making such a major pivot. So I'd love to talk about, not the mechanics of it, but your mentality. So I remember when you started, and you said, Brian, I've figured it out, I've cracked the code. You said, I've figured out how to make a pay-per-call business that's going to scale and it's going to change the world. And you obviously realized it wasn't going to scale as fast. Yeah. Well, it's okay to be wrong, but very few entrepreneurs are able to, especially that late in the game, acknowledge it and do something about it. So you can talk about the psychology of that, the realization, the emotions. What does it feel like to realize that the business isn't going to accelerate the way you want, and then have the conscience of mind, the presence of mind to make a change?
It's horrible. I mean, some of you guys were at Yext when we went through this. And John, I know you were. Like, the first, you have to juggle a few different things. The first is that you have your team that has been sold on a certain, vision and journey, and you realize that that's wrong. And so, how do you, as a leader, juggle the fact that you need to get everyone aligned behind a new vision while explaining that you were maybe wrong about the old one? And so, the first thing you've got to do when you go through something like that is shore up your team, because the last thing in the world you want is to lose your talent. Second thing that we were lucky to have was the fact that it wasn't just like our existing business was slowing. The growth was slowing, but we also had a concept that we believed in, that we knew based on everything we've learned over the past 3-4 years building the old one, and by the way, failing many, many times, that we had a concept that was going to be potentially powerful. But a concept is just that. It's a concept. It's a concept. And when people are bought into your company, it's a tough thing. And so I think what ended up happening was we had people that were not just bought into the old vision, they were bought into each other. And people like Sean and Tom and and Brian, my whole team, we believed in each other and made our way through it. And now we've got something that is changing the world, one location at a time. And I'm so glad we did this. But I'll say, Brian, what you did was brave too. Most successful entrepreneurs, by the way, like when they sell a company to Yahoo and they're huge, like they're not just like, I can do it over again. There's only a few people that have done it successfully twice. And for those of you who work for AppNexus, you're lucky to have a chief executive and founder who has, and that's Brian. He's, to do this twice is to do it once could be luck. I think Andreessen said something like that. Once is luck, twice is not luck. Once could be luck, twice is definitely not luck. Andreessen actually, by the way, did it literally twice. So I think twice is probably about, I think with Elon, he's probably done it 3 times. But what you did was also brave. Most people that do what you did and reinvent and re-engineer something don't just immediately try to do it better. But I think that's, if you look at our careers, that's the thing that you and I have in common, which is that I am never satisfied. I see the things we've done right, and I see the things that are still broken, and we launched a huge partnership with Facebook last week. We built a really neat way to update location data right in Facebook, and everyone wants to take a nap because we sprinted for a month, but like I already see the next 50 things we want to do, and I think that just builds upon itself. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I've never been accused of running after something as hard as you do, as all the AppNexus people will attest.
I've seen
calm,
you run after a basketball pretty
thoughtful,
hard.
refined, always. That's a joke. How far along was that concept for the new business when you decided to make the pivot? So you said it was a concept, and you had a really good sense that there was a market there. So, but it was just like, okay, I'm done with this one, we're going this way. How did you split your team up? You weren't a huge company at the time. Right. You had limited resources like all startups do. Yeah. How do you make that decision? How do you allocate resources? How big of a bet did you take? Oh,
we bet the whole thing. We had $10 million on the balance sheet. We wrote the whole thing away. We guaranteed it to Yahoo and to Yelp and to 20 other partners. We literally guaranteed more revenue in cash to people we wrote contracts for than we actually had in the bank. So we bet all of our cash. I grabbed a team of 6 people. Daphne grabbed Daphne. We went into my room, started calling people, and then we sort of basically threw our weight, everything we had behind this new concept. I mean, if this hadn't worked, we would have been dead, which I think was actually a good forcing function. We had no other choice but to succeed, and that's good. If we had the chance to live, we probably wouldn't have lived.
So burn the boats, I get, but they burnt the boats when they got there, right? How close were you to knowing this was real when you lit the match?
I think as an entrepreneur, you have a hallucinogenic optimism, number one. Number two, you don't have a good comprehension for how hard something actually is to make. Like the fact that I completely underestimate how big projects are is a huge advantage. It's a disadvantage in that if you're, it's a disadvantage in a lot of ways too. But it's a huge advantage because I'm like, yeah, we can do that. Let's go. And then you get there and you're like, shit, we should have brought more supplies. We're in the middle of the Atlantic. Like, it's all right. We'll catch turtles, something. Life of pi. We'll make it.
Did the Tiger win? I always forget.
Tiger wins.
Yeah.
Princeton Tigers, right?
That's right.
Yeah. How many of you went to Princeton, by the way?
That's good. That's encouraging. If you're watching on video, that was 100% of the audience. That's that reality distortion field that I live in as well.
Yeah. It's good. I mean,
yeah, right.
Like, if I had, let me put it this way, if I had known how hard this was going to be before we started to do it, there is no way in hell I could have recommended to my board that this was the appropriate course of action. But fortunately, I didn't comprehend it. I'm glad we did it.
What did you say to your board?
I didn't really tell them. The less I talk to my board, the better I know we're doing. I mean, they were like, so what are these guarantees you're writing? I'm like, it's fun.
So that's a good segue. So I have this thesis that, as a founder, the job of the board is to give you leeway, to give you a lot of latitude, to give you resources. And, I think early stage investors have a really good sense that they're taking a big swing. They're betting on you. They're betting that you'll pull off these big bets. They're betting on your team and their ability to, cross the ocean with a burning boat, let's say. And, but everyone knows it's on fire.
Yep.
And I think that's the point. Like, everyone kind of knows we have so much money. If we run out of money before we get to a certain point, then that's it. But it was a good journey. It was fun. But I find that as companies grow, and it certainly applies to AppNexus and others, that at a certain point, the stakes are higher. We've raised a lot of money. We have a ton of employees who depend on the company for livelihood. We have clients and partners who have big investments in the platform. And so as those stakes get higher, the job of the founder changes. And so as an example, we think about AppNexus as a speedboat. Well, now it's kind of an aircraft carrier. Yep. We can't turn it quite as fast. Yep. When we turn it, there's lots of good things we can do. Yep. But it takes a whole lot more process and communication. There's a real risk about that. And so those transitions get harder. And so your comment about your board, I'm jealous because we're at a point where that's not an option. The board really has to be in the loop because there's such a long horizon. There's so many things. There's so many planes in the air, to use my analogy, that it requires everyone's focus and attention to make sure they all land. Yep. So
you guys also have a super long sales cycle. Like the installs, 12, 18 months. I can only imagine to get someone to, some of the big companies to really adopt you, which requires a much longer planning cycle.
Yeah, well, and products take longer to build, and there's a lot of complexity. Yeah. But even so, I mean, even just given the core of the business. So talk about that in context of Yext. Mm-hmm. So you talked about your core team who really believed in you, who really believed in the new vision. You get your team to pivot. Yep. You spin off a bunch of people. Yep. So how big is Yext after that spin off?
So right after the spinoff, actually what we did was there's kind of two steps in the spinoff. There was the actual physical spinoff, and then there was the sale of the asset that was spun out. Two distinct events. We spun out the asset in March, and then we sold it to IAC in August. There were about 100 people that there were more employees at the spin out and in the new code than there were in the old code at the time. But what we had done was we sort of split things physically, and there were, by the time we spun it out, it was about even, like maybe 100. Now, and then we sold it to IAC in last summer. But to go back to your point about sort of process and communication and stuff like that, I view my job as the founder kind of to do two things. The first is to be in the center and steer the rudder, steer the aircraft carrier, get it going in the right just make sure it's like going in the right direction, and make sure the stuff that's supposed to be happening continues to happen, and making sure my team is just all clicking and humming on that stuff. And that's job number one. And I spend maybe half my time just kind of anchoring things and just getting momentum behind what's working. The other half my time, and this is what I love to do more than anything, is spent on jumping to the edges. So jumping to the new stuff, to be right literally in the front, the tip of the sword, on a brand new feature, or a brand new product, or a new marketing campaign, or a new partnership, and literally handling. I mean, I told you we launched a Facebook we launched our Facebook sync last week, or 10 days ago or so, and literally, I mean, I personally was handling many of the files getting going just because I wanted to see the flow. I wanted to get it going right, and that's what I think my job is. What any founder should do is basically, keep the course running and run a company, but then jump to the edges and work on the new stuff and get the new stuff going, and sort of jump between those two. And at Yext, we try really hard to have a good balance between those two things. I'm curious to hear what you do at AppNexus and how you think of.
Well, I think what you're talking about is very descriptive of the founder behaviors.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a transition point from founder to, let's say, CEO, where the jobs are actually quite different. That if you look at the CEO role, it has a lot of different implications, I think, and expectations, which isn't to say they're not both super important. But I guess for me, I find that, at some level, those founder activities are sometimes challenging. And if the company depends on me as the center of that rudder, there's moments when I'm out at the edge. Who's driving?
Moments.
Yes, and vice versa. And I think that's something that companies all have to go through is, I'm never at the edge. So let's talk about that from a team perspective. I mean, so you're out doing Facebook sync. You're at the tip of the sword, as you say.
Yep.
So, one of the questions one of my board members says, so who's flying the plane? And I said, you really don't understand my analogy. We're talking about boats.
This is spaceship. This is spaceship.
That's why you have to talk to your board more. So you're on the same metaphor.
We guaranteed our whole balance sheet to buy a spaceship. It's awesome. No.
Okay. Also interesting. New pivot announced. We can tweet that. But let's think about that, because I think it's really important for the folks in the audience, because we're running larger startups. I mean, two of the largest startups by revenue and by headcount in the city. I think many people aspire to be running companies like these. But there's also a natural transition or process as companies grow. And in some ways you avoided it because you got to a point, spun off 1.0, and went back and said, okay, now this is what we're doing.
Yep.
So you're in your second founding life cycle. Are you starting to see signs that founder behavior is needing to change as the company grows?
I mean, Google somehow has made popular this notion of like bottom up, like anybody can have an idea, and like I think they don't get nearly as much done as they otherwise could if they were more top down. And so at Yext, we have what we call a hub and spoke operating model, and I spend a lot of my time sort of working with this model and getting my teams working together and aligned correctly. It's not just an aircraft carrier; it's really a fleet, and you have to synchronize the fleet and make sure that the battleships are near the aircraft carrier to protect them from the, take this analogy to wherever, to protect them from the torpedoes coming in, and that you have planes going up and the whole thing is synchronized. And so instead of inventing a new kind of plane, we have to spend our time on basically making sure that the battleships and the destroyers and the aircraft carriers are all working well together. And at Yext, we have a hub and spoke operating model where each of our channels, each of our divisions has an executive in charge of it, and we like to empower our teams to get stuff done, but we have ways to kind of keep people in the loop on exactly what's going on. What we don't do is we don't like, and there's nothing that bothers me more is when there's like random stuff happening. Like we have enough really obvious stuff to do to grow our business and to help change the world of location and to get perfect location information to every hand that does not involve like sort of like randomness. And like when we need innovation, that's when I want to go back to randomness. But like maybe the answer is it's a little kind of different by sort of where you are in your company. Like right now, we're at 150,000 locations. We have a clear path to get to 300,000 by the end of this year. So we're going to double by the end. We're going to double in the next 8 months. Then by the end of the year after that, we'll be 650. By the end of the year after that, 1 million. So we're just kind of on like a growth rampage right now, where just kind of being organized and being tactical and being smart with our expansion is going to get us where we want to be. And that requires a totally different mentality than trying to engineer a new business model, which I think the founder really knows how to do. So my behaviors, the stuff I spend my time on, are a lot more getting people up to speed on stuff, which is totally cool because great people are what are going to take you to that next level. But that, instead of sort of coming up with new stuff. I don't know, what do you think?
I don't think you're sounding very crazy. That sounds mature and thoughtful, and your head's down building on a model that you've proven.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint.
I know. Everyone's like, oh, great, crazy. But I think that's actually a compliment in this case, because what you're basically saying is that moment of, let's call it pure craziness, when you said, this isn't working, which is actually, by the way, purely rational, in the sense that most people would say you're crazy to do what you did, but it actually was a fantastically intelligent moment for you as a founder.
And you know what the irony is? If I had really told the VCs how much risk there was here, there's no way in hell they would have let me do it. Like, I mean, they would have said, go for it, but written me off, like, we're done. And if you're a VC, don't you want that behavior? Don't you want, like, if you're, I mean, I don't know anything about the venture business, but it seems like what you really want to reward are the big bets, because that's where they make all their money, not on sort of a bunch of smaller wins. Now, I don't really know the venture business that well, but
one of our investors talks about it as a spectrum between fear and greed. So you're always balancing those two. And so it's an interesting way to think about the world. If it's, how much, if you don't expose them to risk, then they'll just have their greed genes going, and the more the risk they feel. So it just goes back to communication and how you frame things.
Right.
And I think your team is probably in a similar mentality at most times, is how much risk do we want to see? How much risk can we afford to see? Right. But I do think that what you're talking about really is a pretty exciting moment of scaling a model that you've proven.
Yep.
And that moment of product market fit, where obviously the market's like, yes, we need this.
Yep.
What I'm curious about is, how defensible is your business? So, I mean, just naively, from my perspective, it seems like there's probably someone in the audience on their laptop going, syncing information to a bunch of places. There's got to be APIs for that. Let me just go build Yext.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll fund you. Yeah, let's do it.
No,
you know what else? You should also, while you're at it, build Dropbox. Just syncing information across, a bunch of different platforms. What could be hard? What could be so hard about that? It turns out that there's a bunch of things that make Yext defensible. The first is that our go-to-market, and this gets back to the experience, as it relates to small businesses, we're really good at signing up small businesses. We've been doing that for years. We did it for our old stuff. So right away, as soon as we started this product, we were able to put on tens of thousands of small businesses and get paid subscriptions. When I say we have 150,000 locations on our platform, I'm not just talking about, it doesn't sound as big as some other startups you hear about in New York with like their user growth. These are paid active subscriptions where they're actually paying customers. So the number is actually starting to make a fairly large dent in the active locations of the world. But the point is that our go-to-market was extremely good. We had a 3-channel go-to-market: small business, enterprise, and then we work through channel partners that resell the Yext software when they touch small businesses. And so we had deep relationships that made that possible. The second was that I guaranteed that any new entrant would have to guarantee $10 to $20 million of capital to the publishers to kind of break that chicken and the egg cycle. So to get Yahoo to publish listings in the way that would copy us, we had to pay Yahoo quite a bit up front. And I'm confident that another company would have to do the same too. And so they'd have to sort of either have customers to start with or be able to get someone to write the check. The third is that it's actually technically complicated to do what we do. It's not trivial to build a crosswalk between a location and that particular listing on that particular location's listings on 50 sites. So there's a non-trivial technical aspect. There's a lot of there'd be a large capital investment, 10 and 20 million. And then what have they made? They've made something that's not as good as what we already have. And so I'm not sure that a VC would really finance something like this, so it'd be hard to get the capital. And by the way, if someone wants to compete with Yext, we're a platform, so any third party that wants to provide our service Okay, they can just build it. Everything that can be done in our interface can be done via APIs. So third-party companies, some of them in New York, some of them in other areas that you've heard of, use Yext software, and they just basically roll in our platform and sync location data everywhere that have deep small business relationships already. So a key part of our competitor strategy is just to allow anyone who wants to sell a location sync service to sell Yext and make it their own. And that has been a key deterrent, we think, for many competitors. The last thing is that it doesn't make sense for any given business to work with more than one location provider. Once you're using our software and we're syncing your business's locations everywhere, it doesn't make a lot of sense for you to switch. We're pretty cheap. We're not very expensive. It's a few $100s a year per location. But where's the weak point? Where's someone going to beat us? Our biggest risk strategically is not that someone comes and builds a better Yext. We will kill them. You're trying to get me to turn crazy. We won't kill them. They will just die. Like, they have no chance. They have no chance. No chance. We have the second best engineering department in New York City. The second most charismatic CEO in New York City. Longest haired CEO in New York City. A competitor would have a really tough time out Yexting us. But our big risk is not that someone does a better job of doing what we do. Our big risk is more sort of systematic, like global, meaning that one platform, Google, grabs all of local search, and so there's no need for a multi-platform location update, right? So if Google squashes everyone and grabs 100%, 98% of local search share, putting Yelp out of business, putting Facebook out of business, putting Bing, et cetera, if there's no other supplier of essentially local search, then that's our biggest risk. And so we love it when companies like Foursquare are successful and Facebook launches graph search. By the way, Facebook has captured 13% of local search with just kind of shrugging and putting it local search widget basically in their mobile app. So our biggest risk is more of a economic risk than an actual underlying system risk. But I'm not sure if VC would have funded our business, but they didn't really have any choice because we just took all the money in the old business and just put it into this one.
Right.
But I always love to hear the story of how many VCs did you pitch for Series A?
Well, Series A was easy. Series B was the hard one because we were in the middle of a pivot and no one liked the pivot.
No one ever likes the pivot.
Why would you invest in someone who wanted to build an online advertising company in New York City who'd done it before? That just sounds crazy.
Why would you?
I don't know. But they did. We finally raised some money. But I think that's sort of the point, though, is if you talk about Yext now, it seems obvious. And what I love about your business is everything today makes it seem obvious. It seems totally obvious to us now that AppNexus was a great investment thesis back in 2008. I told an entrepreneur recently, I guess I must have said in some article or something that we pitched to 40 VCs and no one would fund us. And everyone's like, well, how could they not? Well, in hindsight, somebody turned down Google when they were raising money too, I am sure. And at the time, nothing seems as obvious as it does in hindsight. So your business seems totally obvious today, and I think you're absolutely right that you have an incredible competitive position. At the same time, there's a moment that for an entrepreneur, you're blessed with the ability to see that future and believe in it and convince people to go for it and do what are almost impossible acts.
Absolutely.
Like spinning off a part of your business, selling it to a major company, rebuilding.
You have to do inhuman things too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's why, in a way, I feel like I know how incredibly difficult that was and how crazy it was, and you're sounding totally rational and sane, which I don't know if people in the audience recognize, just that this is a massive, incredible accomplishment, and we haven't even seen what's next. What I suspect is happening is that as you gain locations and build your business, there's folks out there, let's think about Apple running Apple Maps saying, man, more and more of the destinations in Apple Maps are going to Yext. We're going to see Yext Maps soon. I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be the default Maps application on your phone. And finally, I'll be able to get where I'm trying to go on my iPhone. That's my secret theory about where you're going after you buy Apple. So, was I not supposed to talk about that?
I thought we had agreed that there was an embargo until 7, but
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So please don't tweet that part.
All right.
So I think it goes back to
Fine,
something else.
I'm going to say, we'll just go ahead and announce that you guys have reacquired Right Media and, from Yahoo, right?
Color scheme didn't work.
Color
We
scheme.
thought about it. We got very close.
What was their colors?
Blue.
You guys could acquire data and media with the orange.
Yeah, anybody orange. But it's actually a
orange.
very difficult acquisition metric is company color. So it's actually number of Princeton Tigers and company color. So
in your case, the colors are the same, right?
Correct.
Are they? Is that after Princeton, by the way?
I can't speak to that. That would be elitist and wrong. So you said something I thought was really funny, which was if you keep it something long enough, you will be successful.
Yep.
Or you run out of money. Right?
That's successful too. Failure is actually failure is doing something infinitely and not running out of money. It's way worse to just never get there, to try doing the same thing forever. Failure is a blessing. It's awesome that we fail at stuff. Thank God we can fail. It just puts a forcing function on us.
I think I buy that. You had me for a second there. But what's interesting is, I mean, we both know lots of people who've been doing the same thing for many years, and they haven't been successful.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bias here on stage of people who've kept at something a long time and been successful, and I wonder if it's really true. Like that because we can think of so many examples of companies and people who've done the same thing again and again and haven't been successful, that I just want to go back to that quote and just dig into it a little bit.
Yeah.
So what's real?
Well, I don't think keeping it the same thing for a really long time guarantees that you're going to be successful. But I think it's almost, in most cases, a prerequisite for being successful.
I'll buy that. So you have to keep it something long enough to be successful at it.
Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that you should do it either. I mean, what's that philosopher, that German philosopher, Nietzsche? Is that his name?
Nietzsche, something like that, Frederick.
Deutsche.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he had something about, I was talking to our COO, Tom, about how certain people have the same ideas like over and over and over again, and that's like their life's idea. And like that, like if you do it, mine might be a real-time location feed for businesses everywhere. Like that might be the only thing that I can possibly bring to this world. And if that world actually needs it, thank God. If not, then uh-oh. You've brought, what do you say now, quarter second? Is that I heard you say a different metric recently.
I make it up.
Okay,
so
good.
you
Me
choose.
Too. You've brought, look, you walk into this place. Online advertising starts here. It starts in this building. You've brought that to the world. I don't know what else you're going to bring to the world. You have a kid too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That too.
Okay.
You brought that. You also brought, but you guys, the people in this room have brought, you've had this vision in your head. And now every time, you must touch me sort of behind the scenes. You touch all of us. All the time, every day.
Maybe we should reiterate what the business model is.
Yes.
We don't actually touch you.
Well, we're not building a consumer map, so.
Okay. So we'll work on that next time around.
Okay, good.
But I know your point. I think your point was, there are these foundational ideas
that you have over and over again, and people have it over and over again.
Yeah, and one reason I think that, for instance, Elon Musk is amazing is because, the idea of let's build rocket ships and let's build electric cars, are two pretty fundamentally different ideas and both amazing and seem impossible to me.
And look how long he's been at both of them.
Yeah.
It takes that long to do something great. There's for those of you that have thought about starting your own company, it's hard. And it's harder than you think. And it doesn't happen fast. There's a glamour sort of in the press. Like, it makes sort of being an entrepreneur sexy. Like, it's cool to be an entrepreneur in some way.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think it is.
Oh. Don't tell people that.
Oh, it's awesome.
You're completely ruining reputation.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
But I think your point is right. It's not actually awesome.
It's not. It's hard as shit. It's so hard. It's the hardest thing ever. Like, and like, you it's really hard. And like, there's no guarantee of success. And all you have is your own belief in yourself and your team around you that believes in you and believes in the vision. And when you surround yourself with amazing people that can do amazing things, and you're anchored in a great vision, that's what it takes. But it actually takes both. Like, you can have a lot of great people chase a bad idea for a long time, and like that will never get anywhere.
So 2 or 3 thoughts for the entrepreneurs in the room. What would you say are the most important things that people can take away from your journeys over the past 7 years now? And of course, there's still a chance we'll look at this video in like 3 years and like, oh man, we were so successful then. Like, there's no guarantees here in this business, right?
It'll be in a smaller office.
Yeah, exactly. So, but 2 or 3 takeaways. Like, what are the things that people should really learn from your experience? And by the way, there's a mic over here, and so if people want to come ask questions of Howard, feel free to line up, and I'll keep going until people do. But a couple of nuggets.
I think, again, what I'll say is it takes a really long time. It takes way longer than you think, and it's way harder than you think. And the key thing you've got to just be is prepared for not a sprint, but a journey. It's at least, at minimum, to build a company. It's a 4-year commitment, at least. That's to see if it's a 4-year commitment to test out the viability of like a Series A business model, basically. And then if that works, if you're lucky enough that works, and then you get to the joy of trying to make it something, into something more something bigger. We did that the first time around, and we validated a Series A business model, but we're unable to get the lift to take it to the next level. And so we basically started over, and now we're in year 3 of where we were before, but this one's already way bigger than the other one, and the lift is clearly there. We designed it such that there is that lift. But the one, it's not multiple points. There's one point, which is that it takes way longer than you think. It takes way longer than you think. But if you keep at it, and you're smart, you can get there. You can get there.
I think that's fair. I think that at some level, though, you're discounting your own influence on the business. So, I mean, if I was an entrepreneur in the crowd, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to go work my butt off and go through this process. I mean, I think there's an aspect of what you and your team have brought to this too that is extraordinary. And knowing your team members, I mean, these are a great group of folks who have deep belief in you, are willing to follow you off the ledge, and keep on going when they hit bottom. So, what do you think about that? What does that mean for other entrepreneurs?
I mean, another point I'll make is make sure you work every day with people that you love. Don't waste your time with people who suck. Like, I mean, how much time do you guys spend in this office? Like, if you work at AppNexus, how many of you work in this office for 7 hours a day? Raise your hand. If you work at App, how many of you work for 8 hours a day in this office?
You're going to go for a while.
10.
I'm here on stage. They're not going to not raise their hands.
I'm watching Alex very carefully keep his hand raised. 24 hours a day, Alex?
I can't say.
All right. Look, the point is this. Life is too short to mess around with people who you don't enjoy being around every day. So, make sure that you surround yourself, if you're going to start a company and start a journey, with people that you love to be around. And I'm fortunate to have, my wife and friends from high school and people that I've worked with for a very long time, over a decade, to do that. And so I tap dance to work every day now. I know you do too. I see you check in. By the way, what color are your fingernails right now? Your toenails?
My toenails are just normal colored.
That's disappointing.
It's not quite flip-flop season yet.
When does that start?
Pretty soon. I mean, today was cold, but they'll be orange. You can be certain of orange toenails.
Can't wait.
I'm monotonous on my toenails right now. So let's talk about something. Again, there's a mic if anyone has questions of Howard. I have many more, but feel free to jump up here if you have questions, and I'll flip to you. Go ahead.
So one of the biggest reasons for your success is obviously selling to small businesses.
Yeah.
For those of us selling to small businesses, what are the top 3 things we should care about in the early stages? And second question is, getting from angel to Series A, are you able to share what kind of growth metrics or any metric that you had to show to the Series A investor?
Just a quick question for you. What are you trying to sell to small businesses?
So I have a healthcare startup, and we're selling to doctors. And it's a $99 a month SaaS
What is
platform.
it, 99?
$99 a month, yeah.
And what are you selling to them?
It's a mobile platform that converts your site.
And so I'm a doctor right now.
Right.
Sell to me.
Great way to put me on the spot.
By the way, I'm the doctor's receptionist.
Right.
So now you need to get by me first. Hi, this is Dr. O'Kelly's office. I'm treating all the sick online advertising out there.
Dr. O'Kelly, how are you?
Well, this is not the doctor. The doctor's is busy right now.
Well, receptionist, how are you doing?
Hi. This is Howard, his assistant. Beautiful assistant.
Oh my God. Okay, great. I was wondering if you have 5 minutes to talk about your increasing practice efficiency and increasing the number of patients that Dr. O'Kelly sees.
The doctor's very, very busy. He's treating all kinds of sick online advertising. Here's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You guys, the key thing, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, the key thing in selling to any small business is you have to, first of all small businesses are different. So doctors are completely different than plumbers, who are completely different than veterinary. You know, when you call a doctor, if you're trying to sell a doctor, you have to deal with the receptionist right away. But if you're calling a plumber, they pick up the phone right away because they're in the business of like being responsive. Doctors you have to get through that gatekeeper. I think you have to build leads. I think it's very difficult to cold call your way into doctors. And I think ZocDoc has been successful doing that. But yeah.
So we're closing like one sale per 150 calls where we actually have a conversation.
So you're gonna have to make 150 dials a day. Do you have
it's not dials, it's actually conversation because dials means that
And how many dials do you need to get to that 150?
probably twice that much, so 300.
How many?
300 dials.
300 dials get to 150? And
Yes.
how many dials can a sales rep make in a day?
About 300 a day.
So your one sales rep is gonna make a $99 a month sale per day.
Yes.
It's going to be very, and what do you know what your churn metrics look like yet?
Return? Sorry.
Do you know what your retention metrics look like?
I'm sorry.
What's your lifetime value of that doctor?
So we think LTV is pretty high because once doctors sign up, they won't leave, especially for the kind of
What does the early data say?
We have zero churn so far with 10 customers.
10 customers. You know, the key thing to any small business acquisition machine is literally the questions I'm asking. It's, you know, how much does it cost you to acquire a customer? What's the lifetime value of that customer? What's your gross margin? And what's the spread? And for you, your big cost is going to be that sales floor. And you're going to find when you try to scale that 300 to 30,000, you can't just plug in 100 people to do that. And when you do that, you're going to see decreasing efficiencies probably because the people that are selling right now are hyper-motive. At the same time, you can overcompensate for that by building better products, by building a brand, by working on lead gen and getting more efficient. Right. So you're sort of, as you scale humans up, one of the things we learned in pay-per-call is that outbound sales to small businesses is very hard. In fact, we don't do it at all. We drive leads and we show the small business their problem. We show them, you know, if you go to yext.com, you can look it up. And you type in your business name and your phone number and you see how fucked up all of your listings are. And how messed up all of your listings are. And then you want to buy power listings which solve your problem. The point is this: if you're going to sell someone diet pills, you better tell them, you better make them feel fat first. And so, when your cold callers call up a business to sell them something, they better really, really know what the pain point of a doctor is to get them to listen and to give you their credit card. So it's all about the economics. Your other question about metrics and efficiency, I think you build that core model of this is our acquisition cost, this is our retention, this is our life, and therefore this is our implied lifetime value. Then you can start to build up a case to raise financing and go after it. But I think you should do so at scale. The thing is, it's very cheap to test this stuff. Just hit the phones, and hit the phones yourself too. Have you hit the phones yet?
Absolutely, yes.
Good,
attaboy. My specific question is, what metrics did you show when you got from Angel to Series A? What was the growth like for Yext?
We didn't raise. So the other question is, why do you need to raise money right now? What do you need money for? I mean, I asked that a little facetiously. Let me frame the answer a different way. Wait as long as possible to raise financing. If you don't need it, then don't do it. We didn't raise when we raised our Series A, we had $3 million. We were at a $3 million annual revenue run rate already, and we're profitable, almost like sort of break even. And we said, look, we know we can go from here to here. Unless if you build a software product for doctors that is a certain platform, I don't think, I think you have every technology business has two things that make it successful. Their underlying technology and then their go-to-market. Doesn't matter if you're Microsoft or you're Google or you're AppNexus or you're Yext or you're you. You have to have both. And so, but what it turns out in any small business product, the go-to-market is actually the product itself. That's more, the whole engine around acquiring the small business customers is actually more important than the underlying service you deliver. Think of GoDaddy. Think of the gigantic small business aggregators, Web.com, Yodel. They deliver reach local. They deliver amazing experiences. Sorry, they have an amazing small business acquisition machine that is fundamentally a direct core marketing core model, and the product is less important. And so that's where I would sort of get those metrics down and get your products right. I don't even remember where we what our sort of key metrics look like, but I know we were profitable on the acquisition side. So spend your product energies in making a great channel, not a great product.
Thank you.
So hi, I'm Mike from AppNexus. I'm on our product team here. My question for you is kind of around the defensible business question earlier. A lot of successful startups in the US have been copied by startups in Europe.
Yeah.
I was wondering how sort of Yext looks at international expansion or international markets.
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. We're going to be going international sort of market by market this year on the backs of our US enterprise clients. So, many of our enterprise, like take FedEx. FedEx is a client of Yext. And so they have offices not just in the United States, but across the globe. They're a US-based company, but they need to have their addresses correctly formatted in the various countries where they're represented. So step one for Yext internationally is to actually support our existing enterprise clients in the United States to get them, to build country by country the internationalization for them. We just finished Canada, and I think we're going UK, Australia, and actually, believe it or not, China. It sort of is next on the list.
Hi, my name is Chungwon. I have two questions. One of them was, how did you find the great name that you trademark and everything, and what was inspiration for both of you?
What was the second question?
What was inspiration of making the name, like Yext and AppNexus?
AppNexus. So in the very beginning, AppNexus was a cloud computing company. Our theory was that we knew in the ad business from Right Media that to serve ads in the blink of an eye with multiple participants in an auction, you had to have nexus points, technical hubs where everyone was within a certain radius. Thinking about high-frequency trading, downtown Manhattan, all those big buildings with no windows, that's where all the high-frequency trading happens. We figured those are nexi. And so we're going to have a few nexus points around the world where we'd consolidate all of this bidding. And so we have partners who co-locate in our data centers so they can actually influence ad delivery. But we weren't starting out as just an advertising company. So the idea would be AppNexus would be the name for the advertising business. We thought it would be AppNexus and support multiple things. We thought we could have finance clients on our cloud, maybe healthcare clients because of the security and HIPAA rules. Maybe by being in the same physical data center, we could avoid some of the complexities there. And also, AppNexus was registered. There actually was a pharmaceutical company called AppNexus, and there was also like a print shop in Denver who had a product called AppNexus. And so we started the process of trying to get the trademarks and all that stuff for AppNexus. And also the domain appnexus.com was registered in some guy in the UK. And so we started this whole massive process of trying to get access to all the AppNexus IP to be AppNexus. And so about 2 years ago, we finally acquired we'd pivoted, we're fully an ad advertising company. This horrible process, tens of thousands of dollars to acquire all the AppNexus IP. Went into a meeting with the management team and said, I think we should change the name to AppNexus. And about half the management team was like, that's the dumbest name I've ever heard. AppNexus is so much better. It has so much more brand legitimacy. And meanwhile, every result online is like, if you type in AppNexus, is like for Android apps for the Nexus One phone. So it's sort of driving me crazy that we're AppNexus. People think we're an Android phone company.
I thought you were.
We tried, we failed. And then we finally, the last part of the story is funny, is it turns out that AppNexus has a medical meaning. So if you actually look up AppNexus, I don't exactly know what it means, but it's definitely something about tissues. And so to net it out, we said, you know what, let's leave well enough alone, and we'll just be AppNexus. It's a long story, basically going back to either we're too lazy or scared to change the name at this point. And now it has whatever meaning you care to associate with it. and our logo makes an X. So we had
Because
to
I
have an X.
recognize the brand very easily, that's why. I was just
Oh, great. Then that we
yeah.
chose. Excuse me. So we chose it because we thought it was a brand that people would recognize
Yeah.
really easily.
The thing about naming is there's this company called NameLab, and they've come up with many of the great names for companies. There's companies that do these naming exercises. NameLab came up with like Olive Garden, Acura. So one day I was like, I want to use this company to come up with our name. Like, why not come up with the best one? So I called the founder and asked him about their process. It turns out that they believe that naming is not a creative process, but is actually a mathematical process. And so what they do is they ask you what you want to convey from your name, and then they come up with the smallest unit of English lexicon, which is called a morpheme, and that actually has meaning to it. And these small units of lexicon, like VE, they're very similar to like Latin roots. They basically fuse them all together and then come up with like some candidate names for you. And I was like, thank you very much for making that, for telling me how to do that. Like, I'm just, and I was like, how much does it cost? And they were like, $500,000. I was like, well, see you later. And so then that night we made a spreadsheet with all the different things we wanted to convey. Yellow Pages and Next came out. The next Yellow Pages, Yext, and that's where Yext came from basically a giant spreadsheet. So it was not a creative process. And one thing I've learned is that when people have a very strong reaction to a name, either bad or good, negative or positive, that actually tends to be a good thing. Like a reaction is a good thing, even if people don't like it. I don't know if you've experienced that too.
I never really thought about naming because we figured it was a temporary name, but it seems to have lasted. Does that answer your question?
Yes, one last question too. Did you guys had mentors along the way while you're building the business, or did you kind of search on your own to find a mentor to help you?
Of course, we all have mentors. I think I think as I've gotten older, I have different mentors for different things. I don't know if you have that too. Like, no, there's no catch-all mentor anymore. It's kind of like, oh, I'm worried about finance. Like, I'm going to talk to this super finance person, or oh, I'm worried about this. Can you help me with this? I don't have like a specific mentor, but I have different mentors that are more specialists in certain areas. And then the other thing I've done is not just have mentors, but people who I greatly admire who are support network, like Brian, who, we can not talk for 6 months and then instantly connect and be able to know what's up. And I know I can always, so it's not just about having mentors, it's about having a support network of people that have gone through the same thing or going through the same thing or similar stuff, or maybe a couple years ahead, so they know where you're going to be.
Yeah, I think that's my experience as well. I mean, certainly people who've been along for the whole journey who have been incredibly inspirational for me, people like Ben Horowitz or David Rosenblatt or others who've just always been there. We also have, I think we're fortunate at AppNexus to have a great management team, and I get amazing feedback and learn from the people that I work next to every day. And I'd say they, have the advantage of seeing all of my foibles and weaknesses, and I hope often tell me what I'm doing wrong. And then there's a big support network, as Howard mentions, not just peers, but people who've been down the road before. And I think that's probably the greatest asset that I've found is just the incredible group of people that I turn to for almost everything. We have a board now that has people like Brian McAndrews and Ed Gillis and others who have just got so much experience, have been in these shoes before, and know what to do. So it's a huge part of growing as an entrepreneur. And also, I mean, for me, AppNexus is the biggest company I've ever worked for. So I'm the CEO of a company that every day becomes larger, and I get further and further out of my depth, where I can say, yeah, the last time I ran a 500-person company, I made this mistake. No, this is new. And so it's critical to have people to say, hey, what's different about running a 500-person company than running a 200-person company, and how can I learn from that? All right, last question. No pressure.
Hi, have you ever heard of a company called FilePicker?
FilePicker?
Yes.
I have not.
So it's a company that these guys from MIT started a couple of years, actually a couple of years ago. And what they did is that there's a lot of really good things online for file storage, like Dropbox or Facebook, but there's no real good way online to kind of manipulate these files, right? So now they're in San Francisco, and they basically have a set of tools where you can look at a bunch of sources of information online, Facebook, your own, or are offline, your own computer, or Dropbox, etc. And then they have an API that basically lets you upload that into your own application, to your own services. So it's kind of like syncing information across all these platforms into your own application. And I wanted to ask, well, since you didn't know about it, now you do know about it, what do you think about that?
Files confuse me. I'm still figuring out Dropbox.
Are you a filer or a piler?
What's the difference?
I hear some people in the audience saying piler. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Does that mean, is my desk a big pile of stuff?
Like in your
Because if
head,
it is,
your
yes.
head, like do you have like an inbox that you put stuff into folders, like sort of in your head?
No, mine's alphabetical by date.
Date. Okay. Interesting.
Arbitrary. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. Howard, you've been incredibly inspirational for me. I think your journey has been incredible, and it's going to be fun for all of us to watch Yext over the next few years, continue to dominate. And for all of you, we have a little reception outside afterwards for Howard, so please feel free to ask Howard more questions. And thank you all very much for coming. Hope to see you for more AppNexus events soon. Wow, great job.